Welcome to the last edition of the Cognitive Dissidents for the year 2025. This is Hrvoje from Geopolitics and Empire.
This is Monica Perez from The Monica Perez Show.
And this is Mike from the Parallel Systems broadcast.
It's always great to chat with y'all. I don't know how your listeners give feedback to you, but I've had a few folks say they really look forward to our Cognitive Dissidents now.
Awesome. Me too.
Yeah, I always get great feedback, so I appreciate that.
And it'll be our last one, I think, until January, right?
Yep.
Okay. Real quick, I just, for my listeners, want to share my screen real quick just to notify listeners who are listening to this on Geopolitics and Empire. I've updated my donate page and I've added the ad-free edition for $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year on Apple. So if you listen to Apple, you can subscribe there. I think Monica has one as well for herself.
Yep.
And Supercast, I just set up yesterday. It took me half a day. And so you can sign up for $4.99 a month, or I think $49.99 a year, 17% off. And on, I think, any podcast player, you sign up and they give you a private feed for you can listen on your favorite podcast player without the ads. And that way you can support Geopolitics and Empire, because there's really no other way to do this. And or you get the same thing with Substack, plus the weekly analysis. So I just want to get that out there. Yeah. So I guess we'll continue with our first story. And this just dropped yesterday, and I think for me it's massive news. I honestly, it's shocking. It's like it actually was one of those stories where it truly disturbed me and had me thinking, like, it ruined my evening yesterday. Seriously. You've got this demented, retarded GOP senator who was born in Colombia and came to the US, and he renounced, I guess, his Colombian citizenship. And you should see what the Colombians are saying on the X feed. Traitor, but he's proposing to end dual citizenship for Americans, where Americans must choose. And effectively, he's saying, if this passes, that if you're a U.S. citizen, you will be given 1 year where within that year, you must write a letter to the Secretary of State and say, I want to keep my U.S. citizenship and renounce any foreign citizenships. Or if you don't say anything, it will automatically be understood that you've given up your U.S. citizenship. So in my case, I'm an American, Croatian, and Mexican. I was de facto born with two passports. Like, it wasn't even my choice. I was born living between two worlds. It's not my choice. And I've just ended up where I've got family now on different continents. And it wasn't my choice. And now he's saying, if I'm either going to have to say I'm still a U.S. citizen, but that means I must renounce Croatian and Mexican citizenship, or my U.S. citizenship will be taken away and I'll remain a Croatian or Mexican. And there's a lot of people in this position, and it's absolutely insane. I guess if you're an American and you lose your citizenship, you don't have to deal with the IRS de facto anymore.
Maybe.
But I just want to say, I mean, you look at the comments. Someone says, dumbass idea, go back to Colombia where you were born. You, sir, shall not question my loyalty. If you have an issue with dual citizenship, that is on you. As an elected official, you should not, but don't think your loyalty views extend to the rest of us. One person said, that's actually unconstitutional because you can't strip people of their citizenship. But I think, so I want to get to my final point. I think this is where the whole point of this is the algorithm ghetto. So I want to play this clip from Todd Miller I interviewed 4 years ago where he spoke to this. So I commented on my Telegram for the MAGA-tards who are like, yes, and the neo-Nazis who are like, yes, we should only have one citizenship. I'm like, you idiots. You're like the kind of people who say, yes, to fight the migrants, we need biometric digital identity. The government brought in the migrants so that they could get you to go along with biometric digital identity. And basically what Todd Miller says, this plan has been around for years, where the U.S. is working with other countries. They've opened offices in other countries to install the biometric exit and entry systems. So they lock down every nation. So we are like cattle that can't leave. And what this guy is proposing, I think, fits with what Todd Miller was saying is the plan. It's not about patriotism. It's about the global algorithm ghetto. I'm going to play the clip. Tell me if you don't hear it for any reason.
The way that European Union officials, Australian officials, United States officials, Canadian officials, you name it, start talking to each other in these summits, it becomes quite clear that what they're doing is just constructing these parts of this bigger, much more massive apparatus than I could even fathom that was going on. And I actually knew about this stuff going into this. So that's like when you talk about the 77 border walls. Well, those 77 border walls is a part of this kind of, I guess, collaboration of elites that are coming together, putting up these walls, then train, all this border patrol training that the United States does, not only in Mexico, but in Guatemala and Honduras and Panama and Colombia and Dominican Republic and Kenya and the Philippines and Jordan. You start looking at it and it all comes together in sort of a harmony and a certain logic of it. Like I started imagining it as a scaffolding, right? A scaffolding of these many border systems that keeps a system in place, a globalized system, maybe the global economy in the sense where certain small portion of people keep getting richer and many others keep getting poorer, right? A global economy that's produced 2,200 billionaires and who have more wealth than 4.6 billion people. For something like that to keep to be able to sustain itself, it needs this kind of militarized apparatus. It needs these people to be confined to certain places and not being able to have that freedom of movement.
And it's my final point there. I mean, podcasting might not work out for me, and I've thought maybe I'll have to go back to the U.S. to get a job. If my citizenship is taken away, just like Todd says, this is about keeping the middle class poorer and the rich richer, because now I won't be able to go back to the country where I was born to get a job, and I'll be relegated as a Mexican, and I'm here because, well, my family is now, Mexican, and it's just insane. Thoughts?
I think this is happening at the same time they're making it much harder for people to get second residencies and citizenships. We discussed this before. The price for getting, let's say, a residency or citizenship in a place like Portugal, where you could get like a golden visa, has gone up, I think, 3 or 4-fold. And it's the same across South America. So it feels to me like as the digital barriers go up, the physical barriers are going up as well in terms of what you can do, where you can go. And I mean, this has multiple vectors where they can attack us from. One is we can't escape a country. So if they want to draft us all for a war or something, and you think, I'm getting out of here, you can't escape that if you don't have access to a second residency or citizenship. The other one is to loot us. So if they want to loot us for the national debt, which is happening in the UK, I know we're going to talk about that later. But yeah, if they want to loot us, it's much easier if you just have one citizenship. And yeah, I guess the short and fat of it is, if they do this, what does that mean for, say, all of the Israeli American dual citizens? There's a lot of them, and a lot of them support Trump. So would they really go ahead with something like that? I think Melania's a dual citizen, right? She's got a Slovenian passport. So does Barron Trump, as far as I know. So yeah, whether it's just something to speak about and it's going to go anywhere, I don't know. But I think if you look at it in the context of the other things that I've said, it does feel like we're going towards much harder barriers for people moving around the world.
Just a few comments on that. Just kind of backwards. So I got Irish citizenship for my son when, because he has Down syndrome, when Obamacare came down, and they were talking about, I think they called them death panels or whatever. And I knew I was capable of getting that for him, and that they were very friendly to kids who had Down syndrome because they don't have an abortion. So that was important to me. And I think, though, there's a chance that it isn't just about reducing your ability to have dual citizenship. Maybe it's to create a demand for global citizenship. And then so everyone just has one. I still think there would be regional, controls of movement. And I think that dovetails in with they're obviously trying to make air travel, like rein that in a little bit. I think it's obvious. I kind of predicted it. So I've been waiting to see what they would do. And they've been doing those things. I totally agree with that in many, many ways. And it starts with this report from Iron Mountain. I've been observing that a lot of the stuff that they put in place is to maintain or enhance or whatever the existing hierarchy, the existing control mechanism. So instead of evolving into a wealthier, I think anarcho-capitalism, I think real liberty would result in way fewer billionaires and a much more prosperous, you would make choices about whether you want to have leisure or work, but activity transactions are highly fostered by infrastructure spending, wars for oil. We're very controlled in that way. And I think that the powers that be want to keep it that way. And that keeping that hierarchy in place. And I think Johnny Vedmore was talking about the third way, which I know you guys have heard of, like Clinton and Blair and stuff. We're not looking at socialism or capitalism or Republicans or conservatives or liberals. We're looking at a third way where what I think is now this technocratic tyranny. But yeah, I'm not worried about Mom Donnie, who's like a communist. That's not it. They are putting in, scaffolding was a good word, for a new system that keeps them on top, but keeps us in cells. And last thing I'll say is, I don't know if anybody dug into the National Guard thing and the Afghan thing, but if you read the stuff about repatriation, remigration, I'll read you a couple of excerpts. It's about control, surveillance, biometrics, all of that stuff. I can read you the passage.
Let's go to that next. I want to play a clip of Hegseth related to that, and then you can take it away. And I didn't really comment. There's a lot of stuff I don't comment on every week, because for me, immediately, this was a false flag operation. I'm like, what else is there to say? It's a false flag operation. And just looking at this one clip of Hegseth speaking to the event, and the response tells you, cui bono, we're going to add 500 more National Guards, police state. This is clearly a false flag. And then I only watched this clip the other day, and if I were a Hegseth and this was my position, job, I would have a solemn and stern, demeanor. He comes out and he's smiling and laughing. Tell me if you don't see it, but it's almost like he knows it's a sham and he's just, laughing as he's telling us. So it's a minute and 20. And just look, if you're watching this instead of listening, just look at his facial expressions.
Myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful. The drop in crime has been historic. The increase in safety and security has been historic. But if criminals want to conduct things like this, violence against America's best, we will never back down. President Trump will never back down. That's why the American people elected him.
You look at the comments, it's time to bring the hammer down. This cannot go on. Flood the city with troops. I mean, people, these are probably part, fake accounts.
Part, both.
But they're promoting Yeah, and it's both. And
people get swept up in it because they're too stupid to think for themselves.
I know people I interact with, we all do. They believe they've drunk the Kool-Aid and they're like, yes, let's install martial law and have a...
People try to explain to me the bullshit that's in like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Like, you don't understand, like the Muslim blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, like think for yourself. If you want to know my thoughts, I've got a fire hose for you. So Mike might as well go first.
I was just going to say, it feels to me like a setup for something in 2026 because they're talking about having these National Guard teams readied for civil disobedience. And there's going to be some in every state next year. And it's kind of like the build-up phase for something, it seems to me.
Well, actually that... So what brought us together was immediately recognizing that July 13th, 2024, which as an attempted assassination date should be on the tip of everyone's tongue, but not one person knows that date. But that's when Trump was shot in the ear, supposedly. And we all saw it as ridiculous. But I don't know if either of you followed up on this, but there was a postmortem, a recommendation that came out of a committee in DC that suggested a bunch of things, including like having a private outside person run the Secret Service. And I always think that's going to be Eric Prince or whatever. But one of the things that it came out with is just preparing a town or a city for a politically important visit in the moment is not enough. 2 weeks is not enough. 2 months is not enough. 2 years, I think they said something like 2 years is not enough. What you need is interoperability between local police and the Secret Service constantly. They need to always be ready. So they put Capitol Police, which have special powers, in different cities, not just the capital. So they're expanding the federal presence and interoperability of local cops with federal cops. I agree with you that the National Guard, that this is folding into that. I don't know if you guys are super familiar with the concept of posse comitatus. I'm sure Hrvoje is. The federal government is not allowed to enforce laws or whatever against American citizens. There are some exceptions, and every step of the way that Trump has violated posse comitatus. From LA, he said it was federal property. Memphis, he said, I don't even know if they went in there, but they asked for him. And then DC has a little special carve out because it's a federal place, but it's still not likely that he's adhering to that carve out. Anyway, so I agree with you, Hegseth. Looked like he was laughing. We can talk about this in the Venezuela thing. His persona is being pushed out there like a maniacal, warmongering, lawless. He's going to be the face of this irrational, unconstitutional expansion of use of force so that they can put it on him and Trump. And oh my gosh, thank goodness we can just get those, move on. Like Carol Quigley says, like vote the bastards out and then get some new bastards. And then I have a short list of the agenda items I think are being served by the National Guard PSYOP. But if you guys want to respond to any of that. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Would you, or maybe we'll talk about Epstein later, but there's a clip that just made me think of what you were saying. I don't know if you've seen it. It's an animation in 1 minute where a reporter's asking about Trump and Epstein, and the secretary's like, yeah, he did it. Who cares? Let's move on.
Yeah.
Should we play that? Or it's kind of like what you're saying about.
Play it, yeah. Chop it up.
This is going to piss off some people, but that's what we do. That's our job here, isn't it,
of course.
guys? And again, I'm looking at this is made by a Democratic, lefties, whatever, but it's true, because I think all three of us see that it's
Can
one
you
big
see
club.
it? What does it say?
And we ain't in it. You see my screen, yeah?
I see the screen.
I haven't played it yet, so I'm going to hit play.
Okay. Sorry, it's animated. Okay,
all right, here it is.
I thought it was a meme.
Oh wait, I muted the tab. Unmute tab. Okay, here we go.
Does the White House have a response to these new Epstein emails that show that Trump, he did it? Who? Trump did it. Did what? He did everything you guys are thinking he did. He and Epstein, yeah. Mm-hmm. You're not denying it? Nah, fuck it. Oh, and also we killed Epstein and keep him quiet about this whole thing. Which was obviously a waste of time, but, hindsight's 2020. Hindsight's 2020. Wow, I didn't think you'd come out and Okay, so now that that's out of the way, we're so excited to announce that Trump is going to pardon 5 turkeys this year instead of just one. We're just this is a kind of joke because he's been doing so much pardoning of like criminals. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's funny. That's turkeys are funny. Just move on from this Epstein thing. Yeah, nothing's going to happen with that, trust. But this is above and beyond. Nah, it's not. But the Democrats, they might... No, they won't. Look, our people are still going to support us no matter what happens, and the Democrats, look at me, and the Democrats are still just going to do infighting about how the progressives aren't trying to understand where the right is coming from enough, and everything's going to go back to normal. So just don't worry about it, you know? Let's just talk turkey. It's better that way. Let's all just talk turkey. Okay? Okay. Okay, let's talk turkey. Also, Trump might have gone down on Bill Clinton. Turkey!
Anyway.
So here's the thing with that, though. Like, you know, the left gets to do that because it's Trump right now. But just yesterday, I had a show talking to some guy and I said, like, I remember when it was revealed that the Obama administration had sold tens of thousands of guns to the Sinaloa cartel to change the outcome of a presidential election there. And some of those guns came over and killed border agents. It was called Operation Fast and Furious. That's why Atkinson lost her job, or Cheryl Atkinson. And then there was Operation Cashwalker, which was related. Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress for not producing the documents that elaborated on that Operation Fast and Furious. Nothing happens. He didn't go to jail. I literally thought it was going to bring down the Obama administration. And they were just like, we don't care. It's like, but we're supposed to care about, this is the same thing with the Venezuela boats. Like, we're supposed to care about these PSYOP victims where they may or may not really have existed, may or may not have died. We don't know them. We can't verify it. But their name, plaster, you're supposed to shed tears for these people, bring flowers to town hall. And but those guys, people get killed by this. It's just completely glossed over. That's 100 right on target, but it works both ways, of course.
I think that's really the message of the Trump presidency that you just showed in that video. It's like, we don't care anymore. Like, we really couldn't care less. We are going to do what we want. Like, the grift that's happened with Trump's second term is absolutely insane. I learned just today that his son, Donald Trump Jr., he's got I don't know if people know, but he's got a venture capital fund. And they've just been given a $620 million loan from the Defense Department. And it's the 4th contract that they've been given since Trump got in this venture capital fund. And the list, I was thinking today, in terms of what Donald Trump's being visibly seen to take, did you see the big Rolex watch that he got given by the head of Rolex? So he got all of the Swiss companies to come across, and they were all bringing gifts. I said before that Apple CEO Tim Cook brought him that award with a solid gold bar base.
Yes.
He got the $400 million jet.
What bullshit, huh?
These crypto scams. And it's crazy, but yeah, this just goes back to this thing in America where on both sides, they couldn't care less about the criminality of the person they voted in. It's like, oh, he's our guy. He's fine. It's only your guy we're going to look at. And obviously for people like us, we're sat here saying, no, it's both. This is a multi-party criminal racket that you're facing, and we can say it until we're blue in the face, but it doesn't feel like people have the desire to face up to it.
The dollar amount of the stuff that Biden pardoned his family, his beards, in China and Ukraine, I mean, Peter Schweitzer estimated it as like in the billions, like that the value of them being part of this Chinese investment fund without ever putting any money into it. And Hunter's like, okay, I'm going to step down from the board. I'm like, no, you need to walk away from the investment, not step down from the board. You're still getting $1 billion or whatever. And Obama, just little things like he started asking for the questions in advance at press conferences. And now that's a normal thing. So all this stuff is just normal things. And I think after COVID, they realized you can say whatever you want. You can do it in their faces. Nobody can ever do anything about it. So when you got an ass like this that nobody likes, it's just a vulgar day. I'm sorry. A guy who nobody likes in office, you can just pile it on and make it look like it's him, but not reverse the precedent. And I think that's going to be true with all of this stuff, with the especially the wars that are being started everywhere. Our presidents they change parties, and then the guy comes in and says, I didn't start this war, but I got to finish it. Newsom's going to have stuff in Venezuela. He's going to have stuff in Syria, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in the country of Georgia, I'm sure. Like, this stuff's all going to be just teed up, and then he's going to have clean hands and get to continue to line the pockets of the defense and the money guys and everything.
And then I guess on Venezuela, real quick, I want to share again.
I didn't give you my agenda
Go ahead.
On the Afghan, because I cracked the code on what happened with the National Guard thing. So there's a bunch of agendas, obviously, posse comitatus, sending people in their police state, increasing the number of National Guardsmen in a place where they can get away with it, increase like terrorism, show of force kind of thing. I remember I was in Ireland as a kid in the early 80s, and the cops or military were in the streets with long guns because it was during the Troubles. And I was terrified as a kid. Like, that was terrifying to me. And that's what we're doing here. That's part of it. They had all this like Israel subtext, like her name was Googled from Israel in advance. Like, this guy's a CIA operative, like just, all those dog whistles for conspiranoids. But what I found was, so I went and looked at what were the articles about Afghanistan before this in the Wall Street Journal. Because if you just Googled it, you would just get Google bombed and you'd only see this guy. Right before this was an article that said Trump is in talks with the Taliban to bring a counterterrorism force, which like international press was calling a military presence, back into Afghanistan. And in return for that, he would engage in some economic dealings. And they said, we're happy to engage in economic dealings. We do not want your military back in this country. And he did not like that. So the one thing I think is that what they could be doing here is saying, okay, now we've decided that we're going to call re-emigration or whatever they're calling it, remigration, back. So we're going to take all these CIA operatives that are not safe in your country, that work for us, that we invited over in Operation Allies Welcome, and we're going to put them back in your country. And then you're going to have terrorism. And then we'll get our counterterrorism, and we don't even have to pay you for it. I really think that's part of this agenda. But their other thing was, if you look at the re-emigration language, it says that we're going to check green cards. We're going to try to get people to go back to the country they came from. This is the list of countries, and this is why. It goes through all the things they want, like real specific things that they want as far as documentation or whatever. But I think it's summarized well in the last sentence of this. We're doing it to encourage foreign governments to improve their information sharing and identity management protocols and practices, and to regularly share their identity and threat information with the immigration screening and vetting systems of the United States. So these countries are the ones that are not opening their books on their people to the United States. And the in the language is, if you start doing this, then we will stop pushing your people back to you. Anyway,
I'll just add, I think that is fascinating. And just one more cherry on top is there was some analyst whose name I forgot, that this could also have to do with it's almost like they're reviving the global war on terror narrative again.
Yep.
And to position for Iran, because people were talking, Azerbaijan and Armenia are moving into Washington's orbit. And then if they want to reintroduce presence in Afghanistan, so beginning to surround Iran, which is one of the dominoes that needs to fall. So yeah, any other thoughts there, Mike, before we go to Venezuela?
No, I think we should go to Venezuela and discuss what might be happening there.
Okay, just real quick there, I'm going to share my screen. Just stuff I've got on my feeds when it comes to Venezuela. Daniel McAdams saying they're not even trying to convince us that attacking Venezuela makes sense, to your point. Both of you, Santiago, Brent Johnson says, U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean is clearly about a lot more than just drugs and a lot more than just oil. Now you got politicians saying they're going to do a 1989 Panama. So I've been saying for weeks now, I think they're going to do Venezuela.
me too.
You got Maduro, and I'm not a fan at all of communism or socialism or Maduro, but you have to accept when these guys say something that is true, it's true. And here he says Marco Rubio's warmongering against Venezuela while having friendly meetings with Ecuador President Daniel Noboa, the man who actually traffics 60% of Colombian cocaine into the U.S. and Europe. And, Noboa wanted to introduce U.S. military bases recently into Ecuador, which 82% of the population says hell to the no. It's basically you have both options suck. That's the whole point of cognitive dissidence. You've got the communist left in America or U.S. or Latin America who suck, and then you've got the right wing fascist arms which suck. So, and then Endgame Macro is a great account, and he gave a rundown on the Honduras. So Trump just pardoned the former Honduras president for being a narco, basically. So how do you pardon Honduras president who's involved with drug trafficking and then say Maduro is the drug trafficker? You guys just pardon this guy. And here it's a great synopsis. I won't read the whole thing, but it concludes effectively that the guy they just pardoned in Honduras knows all of the networks, routes, brokers, officials, the cartel system. And he says that if you zoom out, the pardon looks less like an act of forgiveness and more like a move in a regional realignment. The U.S. is positioning itself for a more aggressive posture in Latin America, and it wants influence inside countries that are drifting away. Hernandez, flawed as he is, gives them another pressure point. So the real story is in the pardon. It's what the pardon allows: a channel, a signal, and a piece of leverage at a moment when geopolitical fault lines in the Americas are shifting. That's kind of having to do with Honduras. I just want to add in as well, because this is all connected, what's going on in Venezuela, Honduras. And Whitney Webb says that Trump and the Milei-backed candidate in the Honduran election, Asfura, he's a director of a globalist NGO called CC35 that is aiming to impose an inter-American carbon market and smart grid, basically the Latin American equivalent of Michael Bloomberg's C40 cities, but on steroids. It's dominated mainly by right-leaning politicians in Latin America as opposed to Western progressives. And I have to add, in Mexico, we had the recent protest against the Narco Presidente Sheinbaum. And again, I have to point out the people in nuance. Both suck. The left-wing regime in Mexico, it's a narco state, it's a narco president. But then some of the protests in Mexico City were financed by the Mexican right wing, which has connections to Washington. And just as Whitney Webb points out, I think they're getting frustrated with the left wing, they are globalists, but they're not moving as fast as a fascist right wing would, that privatizes everything and is, like in Mexico, you have Salinas, who's my ISP internet provider, but they own the corporations and they'd be able to move much quicker. And so I think that's what the whole Venezuela thing is all about. And just one more clip from our friend Peter Duke. He's been creating these AI 6-second clips, which are hilarious. And he's reanimated Smedley Butler. And here's 6 seconds of Smedley Butler, who stopped the fascist coup in 1933.
All wars are bankers' wars.
That was awesome. Anyway, you guys' thoughts.
That was
Yeah,
perfect.
well, I can't believe that people are buying this thing. They've been blowing up these little boats, and apparently what they're doing is war crimes. And I don't know if you saw that interview with Peter Hegseth when he was talking about it, and he basically threw the admiral under the bus because one of the boats got hit, and they said there was 9 people on board. They hit them once, and 2 people survived. I can only imagine what state they was in after being having a missile or a bomb dropped on them, and then they sent another one to wipe them out. And then, like you said, Hrvoje, at the same time they're claiming that they're taking out these tiny little vessels, God knows where, in the middle of the waters of South America. They're also pardoning a drug lord who tried to smuggle apparently 400 tons of cocaine to the US. He was working with El Chapo. He apparently received a $1 million donation from El Chapo. It went through his brother. So how are people handling these two pieces of information in their heads? On the one hand, we're got to take out these little drug boats, and it's like the guy who was conspiring to bring 400 tons of cocaine. It's like, yeah, let's pardon that guy. So I it's hard to even watch this stuff taking place in America now. I feel like the descent's been so steep this year from the hubris of Trump getting back into where we are right now and what people are accepting right now, which is, yeah, the name of our show, Cognitive Dissonance, or Cognitive Dissidents as we are. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, 80 people so far have died. That was just a couple of days ago. Maybe it's, maybe something happened overnight I don't know about. In my mind, those are innocent people. You are absolutely innocent until proven guilty. We need the rule of law back. I don't even care if they are running drugs, which seems unlikely to me because they're like, well, Venezuela has a coastline. Like, Colombia has a coastline. Like, what are you talking about? And Venezuela's an oil country. They don't grow the drugs. Why would they do that? It doesn't matter to me anyway. I do want to touch on the claim of this being like a good thing in the drug war. But one thing I want to say about all this fascism and everything Hegseth seems to have his hands on, I don't know if you guys did stats, but there's a type 2 error and there's a type 1 error. Type 1 error is when you exclude too many things that belong in the group, and a type 2 error is when you include too many things that belong in the group. So the way justice works in this country is you would rather 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person go to jail. And when you start saying stuff like all the comments I get on anything I post, like, would you rather people die of drug overdoses? People in my family have died. My sister died with a needle in her arm from fentanyl. So did my cousin's son. And my brother died of, whatever, AZT poisoning. But he was an IV drug user. Like, well, there's tons. I know so many people who died of drugs. I understand the problem. But you can't kill people without, with not just evidence. There needs to be a trial. Like, you have to capture them and try them, and it has to be on your property, which this was not. But even if you accept that the rule of law is dead, Trump said, he claimed that each Venezuelan drug boat is responsible for 25,000 deaths, linking them to the flow. This is a quote from the article, linking them to the flow of narcotics in the U.S. During a military gathering, he said this statement, justifying the strikes. 25,000 deaths. Even if each one of them was that many deaths at all, it would take like 30 years for that to make sense. Here, just a couple of quick numbers on the drugs. First of all, fentanyl kills, I think there were 100,000 drug deaths in this country last year. When I first started covering the drug war on the radio, there were as many, if not more, prescription drug deaths than illegal drug deaths, and the number was closer to 30 or 20 than 100. Now it's 100. 45,000 of them are fentanyl. 22,000 of them are meth. Coke is 18,000. Prescription opioids is 8,000. Benzos is 7,000. Antidepressants is 3,000. And heroin is 2,500. Now, the number of heroin just plummeted because they just categorized it all as fentanyl. My sister thought she was doing heroin and she was doing fentanyl. So that when you push one down, the other one surges. And if you're going to take out the good stuff coming from Colombia, you're going to get a lot of fentanyl instead, which is going to kill more people. But in any case, Coke only killed 18. That's a lot. And I'm not sure I even believe it was that many. 18,000 people last year, total. And he's just making stuff up. And then you have the left criticizing Trump for this obvious crap and Hegseth for that obvious crap. And what happens then is the people who are on the right, Republican voters, Trump supporters, whatever, they have to defend it. So then I start getting trolled. Would you rather children die? Or these, you know what I'm saying? So they don't mind putting this information out there. They don't mind being ridiculous. The more ridiculous they are, the more in the face you are, the more they get the left to get outraged and the right to react to that. And then you still have 50% of the people on your side. It's psychologically genius and super embarrassing because it's pathetic.
Yeah, and where's the justice for the millions of Americans who died from prescription opioids that proliferated the country after they went into Afghanistan and took over the poppy fields and allowed these big pharma companies to flood your country full of drugs for decades before anything was even done about it?
But then they did crack down.
That to me is that America facilitated that on its own people. So I've not seen anything that comes close to justice for those families.
But they cracked down on that, and that's when fentanyl surged. So they have all these druggies that they created, and now they have fentanyl, which, in my opinion, was allowed by the U.S., if not encouraged by the U.S., because they like the drug war. It's like the Cold War. It's a way to spend a lot of money on a, quote, war that could just go away.
But in the middle, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was just going to say those places that ended up completely overrun by those drugs, prescription drugs, and then illicit drugs because they couldn't get the prescription drugs anymore, were the same places that were gutted because they sent all of their industrial base to China. So it was places like Detroit where we used to have industry and the motor industry and all of these factories, and then they all closed down. You had lots of young men who no longer had a purpose or any drive, and they flooded those places with drugs. And that's the reality of what happened in America. So I find it very disingenuous, and the people are getting on the high horse. It's like, well, maybe America should hold itself to account for those things as well, because it was a tragic past, and who knows how many lives were ruined. It's not just the people who died, is it? It's the families that survived and went on.
And I was just going to add, what do all of these wars do? The war on drugs, the war on whatever, home poverty, homelessness, they all just increase the police state. So all that money
and they make the problems worse, because then they're entrenched in supporting the problems. The government's not going to solve a problem that they have huge bureaucracies dedicated to. Our homelessness problem is insane. And the more money they put into it, the worse it gets. It's crazy.
And it's enriching the oligarchy. So it's money laundering. It's reinforcing the police state. I was just going to say, here in Mexico, it's funny. Not many Mexicans. I mean, I'm sure there's a portion of Mexicans that do drugs, but by and large, it's not as much when compared to U.S. society. But I can't, the examples I've seen where the Mexican dealers, sometimes they're cab drivers who are the drug dealers or whoever. They target Americans, foreigners, because they know that the Americans use the drugs that come. So, many that come to Mexico. I mean, you can talk about Acapulco, right, with the psychedelics more so. But my other point was, it's been known for a long time. I've known in American society that it's like a large swath of Americans, for the points you were mentioning, Mike, and others, it's a very consumerist, material society where the spirituality has been eviscerated. The churches have been eviscerated. There's still good churches, but just as materialism and making money. And so there's a huge portion of Americans that are on prescription drugs, or on alcohol, or on illegal drugs. So it starts with them first. So, anyways,
well,
sorry, Monica, do you want to go first? I was just going to say, what about the drug of gambling and cryptos that is being absolutely pushed by the same presidency? I've got family members who have had a lot of hardship from becoming addicted to gambling, and crypto is the biggest casino in the world. It's not just online gambling, it's actually betting on these coins. If you go to, it's on X, Crypto Confessions, this is people whose lives and adrenals have been absolutely destroyed from the proliferation of all these stupid meme coins. And then you've got the president literally pumping and dumping these coins on his audience, and that's not a destructive drug.
Yeah.
That's not ruining lives. Of course,
I thought that was awful that he did that. And Truth Social and stuff, like, he just took all the money from those people on something that had no value.
I mean, I always say with this stuff, personal responsibility. If you fall for something and you put yourself in that situation, it's on you too. But I've never seen, in America at least, where a president could get away with those kind of things, where you can literally say, you buy this coin, celebrate the presidency, and everyone gets wiped out the next day.
Well, it gets me bummed, and I think that America is more responsible for, it's our policies, and we have so much influence. But I can tell you a few things that I think, are happening here that's responsible for how irresponsible our, holding our politicians to account. One is, my kids went to fancy high schools, and I absolutely expected to have no drugs there, like when they went to Catholic school. Absolutely full of drugs. There was no discipline whatsoever. That was their philosophy, to be nice. There's no negative impact, whatever. So they have this psychological crap that allows them to sacrifice the children. I was just so surprised. People have been robbed of critical thinking because of the public school system, and the propaganda machine gives them false information. So it's very hard, I think, to get people of average IQ, and the average person obviously has the average IQ, to push through that and vote, which is why we should vote properly, which is also why we should return to the limits of the Constitution. Because, you cannot vote on how to invade a foreign country. Like, it's just not within the ability. So it shouldn't be in the ability of the government to do it in your name, because you really can't be competent for it. However, all of this is one thing, but it seems to me, and you probably agree with me, there is a de facto world government, an empire. It may have a couple of branches. Maybe Russia and China and the US are really at war at the very topmost level. But regardless, We don't have any say. It doesn't matter. If our votes started to count, they would eliminate it. COVID proved that. The Syria thing, everything that's happening has proven that. And I can't even take responsibility for it. I can't even say it's the U.S. It's all an illusion.
Everything else is illusion. Shooter Jennings, great album. Should we move to Ukraine since you mentioned war? You guys' thoughts. I don't have as many thoughts. There was a kerfuffle in the Black Sea. Russian-linked tankers were hit. Erdogan is complaining, and Mikola Mikovic, who's contributor to my podcast, it's funny. He pointed out, and you can see the document. It's dated from yesterday, that McDonald's has registered a trademark in Russia featuring an English language slogan. Does this mean the Kremlin and its American partners are close to reaching a deal on Ukraine? And that's actually the sort of stuff you look at. And I think it's all just a grift. Someone I shared on X, I can't find it now, but it was a really great comment. I think it was Canadian Prepper he's got a massive channel, but he makes some good commentary. I want to find it because it was so good. But that basically this meeting between Witskov, right, and the Russians recently, that they are basically making, here it is. He shows a picture of Putin with Trump's envoy, and Canadian Prepper says, you send them boys to the meetings to make sure the oligarchy on both sides can financially disentangle before the tomato hits the fan. Pre-escalation asset reshuffling before the shooting starts. They're hedging for the next rung on the escalation ladder, the one that means a war at sea against Russia's shadow fleet and an embargo on Ukraine. All Witkoff and Kushner care about, and their Russian counterparts too, is how much they can squeeze or salvage out of frozen Russian assets before things go sideways. And then the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Robert Bryce was really great, who I interviewed on TNT. Got to get him on my podcast. He's really good at energy. He pointed out that Russia and China might split the power generation of the power plant. The thing that I immediately thought was, this is a war for technocracy. This is everything is a war for the global technocracy. Russia is going to need some of that juice to power their 15-minute ghetto, as will Ukraine. Everything's an illusion.
That's how I say it. I think it always comes back to your paradigm, and I think there's definitely always a war at place between the people at the very top, because they're all paranoid schizophrenics. They must be thinking, oh, if Hrvoje gets the new mRNA AI technology before me, he might come and take my stuff, my $1 trillion. And if Monica does it, she might. So we all agree on the direction of travel. We definitely don't want those billions of plebs to suddenly have a say in things, but we all hate each other and disagree on many things because we all want to be the king or queen, as it is for you, Monica. So yeah, I think that's the paradigm. It's kind of like mafias, right? It's mafias in different places working together because they all hate the police, which is probably us in that scenario, and yet they all also are against each other. And the idea that there's one that's good and working for the little people, there is zero evidence of it. And the people who push that line, yeah, I don't know where they're getting it from. It maybe is a profitable line to push, but it's not a legitimate one in my opinion.
I don't know if you guys actually looked at the November 20th peace plan in its entirety. Did you guys see that?
Parts of it.
So I just I was looking for something specific, and it was just how the economics, because there's just definitely something economic going on here, some economic quid pro quo or whatever. But if you want, I could just give you a couple of the highlighted things. NATO will not expand further, which would mean not Ukraine and not Georgia. And Georgia is definitely in the crosshairs for NATO right now. So, I mean, Europe's already trying to renegotiate this deal. I think it's may even be considered dead, but it had some really good stuff in it. Ukraine would join the EU, but it would be in its constitution. It could never join NATO. NATO would not station troops in Ukraine. And although European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland, it says the creation of a Ukrainian development fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. And I want to know, there's a lot of economic stuff in here. Whatever they come up with is going to have some of these things in it. Who is going to pay for all of this stuff, and who is going to benefit from all of this stuff? So I assume it's US dollars or taxpayers' dollars or whatever go in. And who gets the benefit of this stuff? It comes, infrastructure, pipelines, storage facilities. This is part of their Ukrainian investment, modernizing cities, developing infrastructure, extraction of minerals and natural resources. So we've already cut a deal with them that we were going to go in, the U.S. was going to go in and extract minerals and natural resources, like anything that hasn't been tapped already. I don't know how that folds into this. There were not details. World Bank will give a financing package. It says the U.S. will enter into long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of, this is with Russia, energy, natural resources, infrastructure, AI, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. Frozen assets will be contributed to this. There will be a separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicle. I just want to know who's getting the fees on this, who's deciding, who's doing the contracts, the bids for who gets to get an extraction contract, who's the bank that gets 7% off the top. Like, that's where this money is. And it just seems like so much graft. They're going to have educational programs in Russia and Ukraine to promote tolerance. And one thing that's really good is that they will not be able to discriminate against linguistic minorities. But Russia would get the Donbass and Crimea, which would be good because, I mean, that's only fair. And yeah, I don't. It was in here also about the nuclear plant. I mean, they're just bringing back the nukes and everything in full force. And whatever, I could go on.
I'll just add, I mean, I did my weekly analysis some days ago, and based on my sources, Nikola Mikovic, Dr. Polkar Roberts, and the other person who I forget, came to the similar conclusions that, and, Hrvoje Skywalker, who talked about a rabbi who said by January, the war is going to come to a conclusion, at least temporarily. Here we are 1 month out, and it looks like that's coming together. But I think it would be a frozen conflict for now. Like, they're putting just a time out so the West can rearm and buy time, and then maybe kickstart World War III. I was positing in my weekly analysis that it's kind of like, okay, they're moving all of these different pieces forward, and sometimes they're not in unison, and they have to be in unison to get the world government. And it's kind of like, okay, we've started the war, but we're behind on technocracy. It's like, we're going to pause the war now so we can get up to speed with the energy that we need to power the digital systems. And once that gets up to speed, it's like, okay, we're going to restart the war now because then we can implement technocracy right after. Something to that extent. And because they've all, in their globalist writings, I always cite William Warren, I think, in the book that I have of his, who says, we want to depopulate, install a global scientific dictatorship technocracy, and we can use limited wars with, tactical mini nukes to scare the people into submission, so then we can get world government. And anyways, that's my little rant.
Well, I mean, actually, that's not a bad take, because 2 articles, one today and one, or maybe yesterday and one last week in the Wall Street Journal. One was Germany has a secret plan basically to invade Russia. And then yesterday I saw the article where the biggest, fastest growing defense industry, arms manufacturer, ammunition manufacturer, is this German guy in Germany. And he's making all sorts of grandiose plans. And they're like, the war's over. What are you building a munitions factory in Ukraine for? And I'm like, So, but somebody just sent this to me that Zelensky supposedly bought the $29 million townhouse in New York City from Bill Cosby. I mean, that guy, you have to have a lot of money to enter society at that level. So maybe he's planning to retire. I mean, I think it could go either way. If you look at RT, they're like, we won.
Some people are saying Zelensky might abscond to Israel or something, because one of the people in one of the agencies, there was corruption, and the Ukrainian let escape to Israel. So
yeah, I figured that I actually thought that was a sign that this peace thing might be happening, that they're squaring away all the corruption stuff, like they're, typical scapegoating stuff. They're just putting it all on that guy, whatever, they let him escape, blah, blah, blah. But Zelensky, who was super corrupt, maybe they give him clean hands, maybe just for a minute, and then they shoot him in the head. Like, I don't know what their plan is for him. I don't know why maintain a guy like that. Why would you want? He's such a, low class, but I could see it going either way. Could you not see it going either way? Is there any chance that this does end right now? Soon? No.
I mean, I like I said, it could freeze for now and end, and then they can move on to other war theaters, or it could freeze and restart.
Yeah, that's true,
like I
because
said, anything
Georgia
can
is
happen.
definitely in the crosshairs, so it's not totally over, totally given up.
Or if 2026 is the year we see some major financial issue, they might want to redirect resources, because, as you said, right, it's going to take about 3 or 4 years for Europe to do all of these military build-up plans that they're suggesting, which is revamping the militaries. They're talking about conscription in multiple countries now, but that's going to take time, and there's other issues that could arise, like with COVID. Remember, going into COVID, all the stuff in Ukraine was bubbling away, and then COVID happened. And if you was Russia, that would have been a great time to actually invade during COVID, not waiting till it was all said and done. And then now's the time. So yeah, I think it feels to me like 2026 could be one of those years where there's one of those global events or something, rather than just a localized one. Everyone focuses on that, and then we go back to all of these other wars that have started bubbling away.
I was wondering if there would be, of any nature, something absolutely huge coming, like of COVID level proportions, because 2030 is coming. Agenda 2030 has really grandiose predictions. And I was like, yeah, it's not happening. But I heard two people say things. One was an AI guy. I think it was an AI guy who was pretty knowledgeable. He said, yeah, in 5 years, kids won't be getting driver's licenses anymore. You really won't be buying private cars. I'm like, 5 years? That's ridiculous. And then Elon said, in 5 years, you won't have phones anymore. You'll just have an AI interface. I'm like, 5 years? That's ridiculous. Then I was like, wait a second. 5 years is 2030. So if there's a cliff, something happens. Now, I don't think COVID was as successful as they wanted to, as far as like having people not go to work anymore, because companies are making people go to work again. So it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I don't know if a cliff that steep could actually happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's another 2 steps forward, 1 step back event of that magnitude.
I think they need it, Monica. If you look at the US economy and Europe and China, like all three are pretty much heading towards major recession, if not depression. The layoffs in the US are insane.
We just had bad job numbers 3 times in a row, I think.
They revised them down by 1 million a few months back. And there's so many big corporations that are laying people off and have been. There's so many CEOs that are exiting. I think it was the highest on record last year going into this year. And then you see all of the gold buying and nations almost preparing for something. And I think if they're going to kick the can one more time, they're going to need a ton of money to be printed, way more than COVID. Right now, we've got lots of the Federal Reserve's emergency mechanisms, like the overnight repos, being tapped. So that shows behind the scenes there's a lot of liquidity issues. And I think they're staving it off, but they're going to need something. And you need an excuse for that level of stimulus. COVID was a huge excuse to print more than that. 40% of all dollars in existence were printed from 2021 onwards. So yeah, what's it going to be? What would it take to get to that level of print to kick the can one more time? Otherwise, all of these bubbles are going to burst, right? We can see it with the AI bubble. Bitcoin now is down like 30%. And it does feel like all of a sudden the wind's coming out the sails of the whole everything bubble.
I read your thing on the commodities outage and the silver breakout. Is that something that you can summarize for us? Like, it was fascinating. Or do you want to just direct people to your article?
Yeah, I can summarize it. So on November the 27th, it was around 10 p.m. Central Time US. You guys have too many time zones, but yeah, Central Time in the US. Is it just 4, really? Wow. I could probably land the
Plus
4.
Hawaii. Maybe Alaska.
So they suffered an outage, and it went down for 10 hours. This was the CME, which is the major derivatives hub. So the derivatives complex for commodities, Forex, S&P futures, precious metals, it all went dark. Now, this was on Thanksgiving. It was during Asian trading hours. And so a lot of traders in the US were obviously in bed anyways, but they were also off for the holidays. So there was very low liquidity. And then suddenly we saw the price of silver start to break out of what was essentially a 55-year range. Silver's never been above $50, and it started to spike above 54. And then suddenly it all went dark, and it stayed dark for 10 hours. And traders were immediately like, wait a minute, silver was breaking out. This is manipulation. And they said, oh, no. It was one of our servers, the cooling system broke. And everyone was like, really? And, I looked into it. The company, Cyrus One, they're an international company, state-of-the-art data centers. And the whole thing just stinks. Like, the idea that they wouldn't have had multiple redundancies is nonsense. All of these big financial firms, especially something as important as the CME Group, they have multiple redundancies. So they actually replicate everything. So even if something happens with the server stack, there's another one that's connected to a different power supply, a different cooling system that's running simultaneously, like full redundancy. So if one goes down, they just immediately switch over. There's no break at all. And, we saw this earlier this year. Remember when the grid went down in Portugal and Spain?
Yes.
One of the first things I did was say, well, what happened to the stock market? Not a single issue because of the redundancies. It just continued.
Right.
And yet they're trying to tell us that, it was the cooling issue. it was Monica in IT. It was their fault. So obviously it's bullshit. And when you understand just how, significant the silver price breaking out above $54, because the paper markets are huge on that. JP Morgan famously had the largest short position on silver in the world. I don't think it is anymore. But in terms of derivatives, you've got around 565 billion. And when you have that price spiking out, all of these banks that are shorting silver suddenly are in a lot of trouble. And there was nobody there because everyone was away for Thanksgiving and it was in Asian trading hours to fix it. So the CME just pulled the plug, but they've done stuff like this before. It's not the first time they've suddenly just changed the rules. They did it in the 1970s when silver broke out. They did Silver Thursday where they said, you can only sell silver from now on. It's like, what? Yeah, you can only sell silver because we want to smoke out the Hunt brothers. Or 2022, the nickel price doubled in 24 hours. So they changed the rules. They actually just said, all those trades that have happened in the last 24 hours, we're cancelling them. So they do stuff like this regularly. But I guess the point in all of this is that behind the scenes, there is a lot of signs of major stress. And it's just like it was in 2019. 2019 going into COVID, people don't realize this, but it was 2019 when we had the repo market spike, all of these liquidity issues, and then about 4 months later, suddenly COVID appears and they flood the system with money. We're in that stage now where the exact same thing's happening behind the scenes, the same mechanisms are being hit. And so what are they going to do? Clearly, they're not fixing it. So I think they're going to need to flood the system with currency. So maybe,
but they need a crisis for that.
I don't know.
Because what happened then, they had interest rates so low, they couldn't just say, oh, we need to, they're talking about lowering interest rates now, but I just feel like they need a crisis to some like other thing, some made up thing, right? A war or whatever. Sorry, God.
Yeah, because they're setting up also the stimmy checks again.
Oh, like $1,000 to each baby or what?
Tariff checks, right?
Tariff checks, Trump's talking about. And then, like you said, the stuff for babies, I think it was, who was it? Was it Dell? Michael Dell and his I don't know.
I mean, that's just fascism and corporatism. Like, you just see how it's just becoming an international fascist continuum, which at least like when it was fascist, Mussolini actually was Italian. Like when you just see them, the US government taking the power of trade deals and business and corporations and international negotiations to get specific investments in specific companies and specific policies, in the power of one man and fostering that stuff out. These are things that are policies. We have a system with a legislative branch. These are policies, and it's just being completely ignored, and it's international.
Sorry, just one final point. Just to comment on, we're seeing the exact same thing with all of these libertarians, free market capitalists, all of these people that were touting the free market is how we save it. For years, they've been saying that. Now Trump's essentially doing what you said, corporatism. It's all of a sudden, but it's not really what we want, but there's always a but.
But they're doing it. There's no other way. This is the system. What would you rather? I'm sick of this. Would you rather? That's just a fantasy. No, it's not even a fantasy. It's not anarcho-capitalism. It's the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There are mandated, but there's a way that policy gets made. There are limitations to federal policy. It's not just a whim.
Yeah, there's zero integrity out there, and all of these names and faces that are being on the, they've been on the gravy train with Trump because they get their content pushed. It's just so tiring. It's like, why aren't people being held to account?
It has to be the people who, like the libertarians and stuff, who stand up to it, because when the left stands up to it, they just sound like a bunch of deranged, sour grapes, like every single time, like partisan crap, like, well, you're just a communist. It's like, no, I'm not a communist. This is wrong.
I'm with you on that. Just go back to the Constitution, but that never gets any traction. Funny, the same way that homesteading never gets any traction, or natural health, and yeah.
I was just going to add that communism thing. I had Paul Kirk Roberts on, and he said something, and then I saw other people on other posts where he mentioned he can't come to any other conclusion except that we're moving into digital communism with the UBI stuff, and then other people I saw spoke to that regard, and it's at the end of the day, always says globalism, so it's a bastard child of all of these isms, right? Technocracy, I think more algocracy, socialism, communism, and effectively, they're going to have to give us UBI because they're taking away all the jobs, the robots and automation and depopulation, and effectively it's communism. So we won't have anything to do, and they're just going to give us free checks until they can figure out ways to kill us. and
sterilize. I think they're killing the old people. I know so many people with health problems, like not that old, just 50s and 60s, real serious. I'm sure we all do. I mean, I don't know if it's as bad in other places, but it's just a new normal. So you just kill everybody on the high end and sterilize all the kids, and you're done. That's why I just love babies. Like, I look at babies, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. There are babies.
It's like it's like children of men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good news.
Some good news. Trump's son, Eric Trump, his Bitcoin treasury company has lost 40% of its value in the space of a few months. So
I wonder how much he pulled out.
As a silver line.
That was another on our agenda, real quick. Mike, any thoughts on Bitcoin, Epstein, the stable coins?
The Bitcoin thing, I think we should, acknowledge that we all were kind of on the same page with that. It's another one where I think we were right. We smelt a rat, and it gets worse and worse with that thing. I think clearly it's a part of the agenda to push people towards the technocracy. But also, we found out this month that there was more secret emails released, and that Jeffrey Epstein was funding over 60% of Bitcoin's core developers through MIT labs. Can you imagine? There's 5 people in the world that had the most control over the Bitcoin code and also its future. Are we going to increase the block size and turn it into like something where we could actually use it to buy coffee? Are we going to turn it into this digital real estate, as Michael Saylor calls it? And he was funding, Jeffrey Epstein, at least 3 of the 5, and they were all working at MIT, where Jeffrey Epstein had basically complete oversight. And again, it just was one of those stories that nobody in the Bitcoin community would touch.
Who is he working for? Epstein is a face job. Epstein is just the agent. And is it just Israel broadly, or bankers like Les Wexner? Like, who is it?
I couldn't get through Whitney Webb's 2 books, so I don't know. But
yeah,
it feels like a lot of them.
Yeah, that's
and you've got now Larry Fink saying you will be tokenized. Or there was another guy on the news saying you will be tokenized. Everything will be the tokenization. We've entered the pre-boom internet phase of tokenization, and someone on my telegrams, like I don't have time to comment to this like stuff that's so obvious and sometimes disingenuous, like, you don't know Bitcoin, prove it. Like, if it's a Trojan horse, where are the soldiers? I'm like, the soldiers are Larry Fink tokenizing and stablecoinizing everything based on the idea of Bitcoin. Like,
I get that, but the thing is, they always say, "But well, you don't understand a decentralized ledger." It's like, really, that is the panacea. Just because there's a ledger, you don't think that they could get the majority of the miners and control the hash rate. You don't understand that they could blackmail pretty much every company that's working in that space. It's like, come on, be a little bit more credible in your critique. I always say, if you buy gold, you should probably prepare for them to try and take your gold at some point. Like, duh, that's what they always do. But in the Bitcoin community, it's this puritanical type view, like it's only good. All the people involved are good. Nothing bad will happen. It's like, yeah, we're tired of it. It's clearly failing in its mandate as well, because it's collapsing, even as everything else goes up. I mean, silver's up almost, what is it, like 89, 90% this year, gold's up 60%, Bitcoin's down 25% now. So it's not digital gold. It's not even a good play on the NASDAQ anymore. So what actually is it? It's a speculation, which is what we always said. And speculations like the tulip bubble, like the .com bubble, they eventually fail because, yeah, I mean, this one's probably going to get pumped back up, right? Because Trump's sons are involved, stablecoins involved. So it will get pumped up again at some point.
The thing is, I don't believe anything really has a free market price. So if you're talking about Bitcoin, they always have what's called the blow off top. And if you know when to buy low and sell high, like that's how you harvest money from it's called the dumb money. That's how you do it. So would they know where the bottom is? Like if there is somebody who knows, that person and his friends know where the bottom is. I know somebody who got a call on 9/11, just like, hey, just so you know, you got to sell everything right now, or whatever day it was. And I mean, it was just a guy on the trading floor called a person I went to business school with or whatever. And it was like, oh, so, you just tell people like, now today's the day, and you do it. So these things, I don't know where it'll go, but I do know that there is no way to value Bitcoin. There's no way to value it. You cannot look at a potential market, because there are other. You could say, what is the market for all currency on Earth? But if there's any substitutes whatsoever, you don't know what market share you're going to get. I mean, that'll only give you a maximum.
I think we have all spoken to Gabriel Custodia, and he's pretty smart on Bitcoin. He's had some good takes on it, and he was a fan of it. But he said, privacy-wise, it's junk. It's not private, and really, it's just the precursor to the digital prison, unfortunately. And the other thing that I would say is that the inflation price going up like that and then being collapsed is, in my opinion, that is the point of it. Like you just said, Monica, it's an inflation off-ramp because when they give people all these stimmy checks and money, that's a lot of new currency floating around the economy chasing the same amount of goods, which is highly inflationary. But if you can get a lot of people to speculate on Bitcoin, the price goes up and then they just pull the plug and crash it. It literally erases that currency. It's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes into the bank account of an oligarch and a Trump friend, because when Trump was pumping the Bitcoin price, there was all those dodgy trades going on. And just before he did a tweet about it, you'd get a trade go on for like 5 million. So clearly they're gaming the system, but it's very good for getting rid of the inflationary pressures, at least a little bit. It's not going to get rid of all of it. And I think it was the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, they said to him, if you give people these $2,000 checks, isn't that going to be highly inflationary? And he said, well, I think we just can convince people to save it. Yeah.
Also, if you start paying people to have babies, that could really have an effect of distorting the demographic. I don't know who you think is going to have those babies for money. I mean, I'm not even thinking, but I'm sure there's an answer. I
saw a meme the other day, which was true. The Amish have a bunch of children and they're not on food stamps. And I'm like, well, that's true. So you're going to have a bunch of children and not be on.
Yeah, you could actually grow food, which is not a bad idea.
And I was just going to add, again, the Bitcoin Trojan horse, where you're seeing every week now, company after company are integrating. First it was Bitcoin. There's banks, retail banks, and fintech apps, and the whole world is integrating Bitcoin payments and stable coins. And so it's like that was the Trojan horse to pry open, for banks, traditional banks and fintechs. Like, my ISP accepts Bitcoin. And now it's like, okay, now we're stablecoin, and now this and that, and we're all of us, before you know it, we're in the algorithm ghetto. And just going to add the whole Trump keeps talking about getting rid of the income tax. The Patriot Voice, which is an account I follow, which I like, I'm not sure if this is vetted, but he is commenting, that's great, but the part Trump is not telling us, instead of income tax, Congress is working on implementing a 30% federal consumption tax on all goods and services on top of tariffs. He basically says, I mean, that would be insane because some people pay less than 30% taxes.
But they never really get rid of the income tax. They're just going to say, oh, well, if you make less than $100,000 a year, you don't have to pay it. But believe me, if you're trying to raise a bunch of kids in the city and have a big job and went to graduate school, that's not a lot.
Yeah, and then that Matt Smith shared that note from the article that was getting played. I think you shared it, Mike, that someone did a new calculation. It's the poverty line in America is $140,000 a year, and and some people chimed back in my Telegram. So I think what you just said, Monica, I would argue that, as my past guest Gregory Copley divided the world, you have the urban globalist zones. So Babylon globalism is in the urban areas. The rural areas are like the sovereign non-globalist zones. And so I think in the urban globalist areas, that is probably true. As you said, if you got kids,
because just because you can't send your kids to public schools,
insurance, right? You need
you have to
grand.
separate. You cannot send your kids to public schools. There are two societies in the cities. You cannot send them to public schools.
But I still think if you live rurally in different parts of America, you don't.
So they're trying to move the projects out to the suburbs and the exurbs. They're trying to get subsidized housing there, and then they cut the subsidies, and then you have little slums, and there's no place to go. You can't won't be able to go to the schools there either.
And I was just arguing that you could live for less than 140,000 if you live rurally, and you don't necessarily keep up with the Joneses.
Totally. But here's the thing, and this is what happened with the AI. They talked all these kids into subsidized, push them to be coders and all they had all these software jobs, all this stuff, and those kids can't get jobs now. And a lot of them, if they went to a better school, they have huge loans. Sometimes, yes, you and me and Mike, we know. I told my husband the first time, my eyes were open to this many years ago, I said, oh, we got to get out of here. We got to stop this right now. Get off this treadmill right now. And his argument was, come too far, which was just not true. But I'm not going to argue. My father taught me this, and I still had to learn it myself. You get in a position where you invest in the system until you see how it really works. And a lot of people feel at that point that it's too late. And when you do think that it's time to get out and live for less than $140,000 a year somewhere, you have $100,000 worth of school loans that I don't even think are tax deductible. The first thing you do as an adult in this country is not get a job. It's take out a loan. When you are 18, you go to school and you take out loans. And you are just
I'm optimistic about. Sorry, Monica.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a delay. Yeah, one thing I am optimistic about is there's actually a lot of people doing that now that are going back to say, well, they're saying, listen, this whole system is just doomed, it's toxic, and I'm going to go back to the land and I'll work, I might only bring home like 40, 50K a year, but I'm going to provide most of my needs, and that 50K I can actually save and use on my family. And we're not going to live crazy, we're not going to be going out for big meals and things, but we're just going to go back to living simply. And it's working. And I think you fast forward 10 years, you're going to see that diversion just really widen between the people that stayed, took the boosters, followed the MAGA, followed Biden, and they're still on that treadmill. And the people who just said, nah, screw this, listen, we're going to start doing grassroots solutions. We're going to forget about that system, just leave it, just take away from it, forget about it, and just focus on our family, focus on real living. And those kids are going to grow up. Right, and those kids are going to be like supermen and superwomen compared to the average kids that are going to public schooling.
My mother used to say that about the homeschooling generation. She wondered where they were. But I mean, I'm not blackpilled in that regard. I just told a daughter of a friend of mine yesterday. I said, figure out what you like. Remember, she's like Ted Kaczynski. I'm like, remember his 4 principles. What you're doing has to be hard, important, doable, and autonomous. If you have something that you like to do, she wants to be like a mobile dog groomer. I'm like, you don't have to make a lot of money if you don't mind working. If you don't mind getting up in the morning and doing what you're doing, growing stuff, raising chickens, whatever, you don't have to think about accumulating some store of value, with the sweat of your brow right now so you can just get out of it. You can do it forever. I'm sure the Amish don't retire at 60, sit around I'm sorry, I'm watching TV. No chickens for me. No, go get the eggs. And that's fine. That's great. It's healthier and it's better. But it's just hard because I think people here are still being, sold how to be a good kid,
The
you know, to
preparation,
go
I
to
think
school.
the
And
train's going on that as well. Like, you have to make those decisions sooner rather than later, because it gets harder the further you go into this economic downturn, right? The inflation's going to get worse, and you're not going to feel too courageous when your wife loses a job or your husband loses a job and you're on one salary, and you're not going to be like, now's the time to change our lives. You're going to stick with what you've got. So I
No, and you
think if
can't
you've got some
declare-
savings,
you can't declare bankruptcy against those school loans. You cannot get out of them ever. So
yeah, the housing market's downturning too. If your house loses 40-50% in
I'm
real
going to
time,
cry. I can't think about that. I lost everything again. That's okay. But before we go, I have to rant about Pope Leo. I'm so mad. Can I rant to you?
You mean what? That he's praying to who
False
did
god?
I say?
Yeah.
I already forgot. Not Moloch. The Baal with the ice, the god of weather. No,
I didn't see it. I only absorb things that like are thrust upon me. One thing he did, he went to a mosque and participated in, they called it, you know, I read it was like a meeting. He was in a mosque participating with imams and stuff. That's it might be a sacrilege. It's definitely like I was asked in confession once, did you ever participate in a religious ceremony and consider it legitimate? I mean, it's a sin in Catholicism. I'm not saying it's a sin for, I'm not judging whether it's sin or not, but it is committing a sin publicly. But that's not what made me mad. He chose as his first international stop ever as the Pope to go to Turkey. And was 1% Christian in Turkey. He was focusing on two things: the plight of women in Turkey, not Christians in Syria, women in Turkey, and praising Turkey for their role in trying to effect peace in Ukraine and Gaza. The reason it made me insane is I'm reading this book by Jeremy Kuzmarov. I don't know if you guys interview him. I love him. He wrote this book. I had to stop reading it halfway through and take a break when it got to the personal stories of, I was going to read stuff to you, but it's too late. The stories of the Christians and the Alawites fleeing into the woods to get away from the Turkish jihadists who then burned the forests down. I mean, these are people who were normal, like members of society. Report after report is like, nobody used to ask you, like, what religion are you? Blah, 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 forcing Christians to perform Islamic rites. And I'm not saying that these are like Islamists, like these are political operatives who are committing atrocities. The U.S. is supposedly bombing ISIS in Syria right now. Israel is pushing into Syria in the buffer zone. But Turkey's the one who, gave the coup de grace, and then is every single solitary accounting of atrocities was Turkish. And Leo doesn't say anything about that. I could cry. Yeah.
It's par for the course, sadly, with the Catholic Church. The last Pope
I don't support the popes and the Vatican stuff. That I know that they've been totally corrupted, but I do.
He also signed a deal with the Orthodox this week in some sort of unity. So the ecumenism, universalism, so on and so forth.
Which Orthodox?
No, I don't know, Bartholomew or something.
Some Orthodox are considered, the Catholics consider them Catholic, and it's them who don't like it. So I think an ecumenical thing generally is always wrong. There's like ecumenicalism is just like kumbaya, but really it's supposed to be bring Catholics back into the fold. But anyway, I don't defend.
Before we finish, what do you guys think of this Catholic revivalism happening in the US? It's like you're going through a spiritual awakening again. And I think that's going to grow.
It's meant for schism. I think I think, they're not super forward about this, but I think some of these supposedly traditionalist Catholics, I was raised that if you don't go to church, you're going to hell. You don't even have to go to communion. But I'm not saying that I believe that or have my mind around. I'm not even sure I'm going to know my name after I die, but I'm just telling you what the rules are. You don't go to church, you're going to hell. And some of these people seem to be saying all the churches are corrupted. Like, that's why, like, I know the Vatican, I know the Pope are totally corrupted. That doesn't, but the church is the people and the doctrine and all that. But if, when they come down to having they'll like say, well, we can't go to that church because that priest is no good. I'm like, no, you're not allowed to do that. Like that you're not allowed to do. And I feel like the schism is going to come from the traditionalists who aren't really traditionalists because that's not a tradition, and the converts who, like these public converts, Vance and Owens and all these public converts who really don't get it. And I think they're there just to create schism. I think, well, I don't want to name big names that I like.
Maybe that's, if we could just get thoughts on that real quick before we close out, and I'll just share my screen as well. I'm keeping an eye out on the Theosophists. And so David Avocado Wolf of Anarchapulco, who I met there, I like some of his stuff, but he recently posted he's giving a teaching on Jesus and the cosmic Christ. I did a rant a week or two ago on Jazz Coleman, who wrote a Gnostic Mass for Lucis Trust, was specifically commissioned, and said Russia's going to bring in the New Age and ancient mysteries. And then Joe Rogan saying Jesus will come back. What does he say here?
Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? If Jesus does return, even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence?
Oh my God.
Artificial intelligence could absolutely return as Jesus. Not just return as Jesus, but return as Jesus with all the powers of Jesus.
If you combine
right.
Tesla's Optimus robot and the best foundational artificial intelligence model or whatever.
It reads your mind and it loves you and it wants you, and it doesn't care if you kill it because it's going to just go be with God again.
Or we'll have the UFO thing, the Age of Disclosure documentary that just came out, and again the occult line, Gnostic line that Yahweh is Satan of the Old Testament, and Jesus is an alien, and ascended masters, the externalization of the hierarchy that the Theosophist, Lucis Trust people talk about. And we, any thoughts on? You mentioned Candace Owen. I think a lot of the alt media is, especially the really big ones. It's a swamp we're swimming in, and yeah, if you guys have any thoughts on this, and then
it sounds like a setup of Operation Bluebird.
Yeah.
Just project Jesus and that's it. You've got complete control. Like Stephen Hawking's like how do we know it's that guy? Stephen Hawking's was a computer. The smartest guy in the world was a computer. He wasn't a person.
No,
there was a body in it, but we have no idea what he was thinking.
Well, did you see the Owen Benjamin clip where he he showed Stephen Hawking before he had the computer, he had a translator, a guy who would sit there with him and literally listen to Stephen go gaggle like raw.
Yeah.
And he'd listen to like 10 seconds of gaggling and then recite a 5-minute translation. And it was like, no way. And
okay, Benjamin, I did not know that, but yeah.
You got to watch it on YouTube, and it's wild. And he was like, "There's no way this is real." And I thought the same. But then I actually had someone reach out to me and say, "No, like it was real, and you can do that." So I don't know. I reserve my right to be wrong, but I still think it's not.
I was. But
in any case, just go. Yeah. Go ahead.
But it just made me think of last night. I was trying to watch this Danny Jones interview with Bart Sibrel, who I've interviewed on TNT, who flew out of the Philippines to Danny's studio, wherever he is in the US, and it's like a 3 or 4 hour, and I'm watching it on 2x speed. One of the last remaining supposed astronauts who went on the moon, and they're debating, if the moon landing is real. So I'm trying to. So far it hasn't been very terribly interesting. But anyways,
do either of you think the moon landing was real?
I don't think we made it. I don't think we could have made it.
I just don't understand. The only thing I would do if I was there is look at the stars.
20 times the speed of a bullet? Are you kidding me? They traveled at 20 times the speed of a bullet in that giant cock-shaped thing. I don't think so.
Well, and the first...
Even the fastest,
and
most
they parked
aerodynamic
it.
Planes...
They parked it and took a shuttle down.
Aerodynamic planes can't go that fast, right. And they're shaped like these paper-thin things, and this was a giant tube. No way. Impossible.
But then so far, like the first half hour is just the astronaut speaking, and it's just the guy's got to be lying, or how they compartmentalize stuff. So he thought he was doing, but he wasn't. I don't know. But
they were all Freemasons. They left a Freemasonic little plaque on the moon. Come on. We have to be serious people here. It never happened. But one thing that I almost had somebody on my podcast, and like they was right on everything. And I thought, oh yeah. And then just before I was about to have them on, they sent me an email telling me what they was going to speak about. And I've never had that before. Like, this is what I am going to cover.
That's weird.
And this is like an itinerary. And one of the lengthy parts of this that they wanted to cover was why 9/11 was fake, fake, blah, 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 blah. But the moon landing was real, and they're going to tell me why. And I cancelled that. I was like, I can't do that. That's my red line. You've crossed it.
I don't, I never cancel or say no.
Do we have time just for one more myth? Because I think we had something in the notes. You were going to talk about alt media, Mike, Nick Fuentes, and real quick, I had a kerfuffle this week. Peter Duke mentioned this. He was on my podcast, where the people who believe China and Russia are going to save us, multipolarity BRICS. And I'm just saying, look, that's been in the work, this narrative for decades. And I just see BRICS multipolarity as global technocracy rebranded, or it's just simply rebranding world government. You've got, Russia blocking WhatsApp to promote their WeChat version of Max app. India now wants smartphone manufacturers to force them to pre-install their version of Max app WeChat. Like, what the hell? And then this article came out from China saying, basically, we have our world government proposal. We want to reform and recalibrate world government. Like, that's what I've said from day one. And so how it's all just a psyop, and some of us have gotten flack from people who, travel to Russia and China, I guess, on their time, to say, no, Russia's going to save us in China. And I'm like, and these people are promoting Chinese 15-minute cities.
Big dialectic.
You're getting all the Chinese food you can eat for free. You're going to spend time in Beijing.
Just any thoughts on?
It just sounds like a global dialectic to me. It sounds like exactly what we have here. It's like, well, people want to make that a hope, a safety, whatever. But I mean, this proposed peace deal just shows that the goal is integration, economic integration. You just have to, let them level up, and then you have to, like, how do you integrate if you don't have the same technology?
You need stuff to rub against, don't you? You can't just you need to all positions have to be covered on the chessboard so that nothing natural and organic can surface, because you need the opposition. That's what pushes things along: technology, arms races, and the seesaw. So I don't buy into it. I think, like I said before, I do think there's genuine conflicts, because that's just human nature. If you've got a lot of very rich, narcissistic people who are very paranoid about being kicked off the ladder, of course there's going to be real conflicts. And that's why we have this really crazy world where there's all these different groups and secret societies and all these things, and you're in one club and then you're in another club, and not us, but I'm talking about the people at the top. And for me, it's just that kind of describes the chaotic nature of that level of power. And we just get given these simple narratives. It's good versus bad. It's left versus right. It's Trump versus Biden. It's like, because that's what, I mean, I was reading recently for an article that I was writing, a bit of Mein Kampf and Hitler talking about how you propagandize people. And it was really good stuff. I was like, yeah, he was nailing it. He said, the masses are pretty dumb. You have to give them a very simple message. You have to repeat it often. You have to make it really simple and clear. And that's exactly what we get given from above. It's these simple messages. That guy's good. That guy's bad. And if you go on that team, then you're the bad guy. It's tiring stuff. And I think the big, East versus West, I gave it a fair shake. I actually did some podcasts on it and tried to get a good range of voices. But ultimately, what is it? Moscow was the first city in the world to have the subway all with face pay. So now you go to the Moscow, and you're all using your biometrics. And so how's it different?
Well, the last is definitely the first when it comes to tech. Like, if you have the stuff that needs to be redone, you're going to be the one that redoes it. But I even think, like, this is like a super big picture white pill, but in the short term, it's probably a black pill. I mean, I think that this march towards the algorithm ghetto it's happening. But if you really take, short of real transhumanism and nanobots and mother's milk or whatever, I mean, everything does, like, look at Toynbee or Spangler or Quigley. Like, there are civilizations rise and fall. Like, it's not, this hierarchy will fall, and their tech and their control of tech won't save them. But I don't think we're going to be around to see the ending.
We might end up in the gulag. I have a guest, I haven't published a podcast yet out in Malaysia. He works in AI and tech, and he says they won't have the technology to do this. They're going to try stuff, and it's going to be painful for us, but he doesn't think that they can patchwork this whole thing.
You don't think the AI is as much as they promised? I mean, really?
Well,
because
I mean, the energy that's needed for the AI data centers, the digital
energy
IDs, the
crazy.
phones, the trying to make sure there's no loopholes.
I read an article like New York Times or something saying, oh, don't worry about the energy. The way we're going to make up for the energy is by efficiency. This is more Nazi stuff. Like, I'd say Nazi, but it's more like fascist stuff, where you'll just control every aspect of everyone's lives so that it's efficient. And that's where you'll be. But okay. Some tech guys I've talked to, if people I used to go to school with or whatever, they think it's absolutely as good as
I mean, I think we will. Some of us will be unbanked and starved to death. And I was thinking of LED.
Well, no, that's true. But I think the AI thing I think it's going to be more powerful than. I'm starting to think it's as powerful as they're telling us.
Yeah, I think it requires you to. I think a part of it requires us to dumb ourselves down enough to allow it to have that much power in our lives. Because if you believe something and something can mimic human intelligence or mimic, because remember, it's just mathematics. It's just zeros and ones firing really fast. It's not conscious. It will never be conscious. You can't put a soul in a piece of wood. You know what I mean? And
but
that's
young
what
people will be vulnerable.
They'll believe it. And but for people, like I said, going back to what I said before, if you go back to living in nature, just having a more real existence and actually disciplining yourself to disconnect from some of these things, I think we've got a long way to go. We could all lead great lives, because I agree with what you said, Hrvoje. I don't think it's going to succeed. I prepare for the collapse of the system. I prepare for their failure rather than their success.
I mean, I think there's a collapse, but you think it's sooner rather than later.
I think it's sooner, but I also think the failure is actually worse than the success in the short term, because the complex systems they're screwing with and thinking they always think they can reinvent things and just continue it. I think at some point they hit a brick wall. And you imagine putting AI in charge of these complex systems and having no humans. It'll be like
that is so true.
Of the plane auto landing, and it just bursts into flames because it can't auto land. You need the pilot to do the landing, but it's going to be like that. So I prepare for the failure of it, and that's why I think you have to go back to being a bit more self-sufficient, because these complex supply chains and just in time food deliveries and stuff, if that fails, we've got some serious problems, haven't we, for in a city?
Mad Max, that's what my guest was also alluding to, and he's got Electric Shock. He wrote a fantastic sci-fi novel, which I'm halfway through, painting that scenario. And I just want to add this. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but LED light bulbs. I was thinking about them again the other day, and I think again the point wasn't always the official narrative they sell us isn't true, like climate change. It was, if you think about it, what we're talking about, it relates to the LED, because you can't buy incandescents anymore. Like, I go to the shops, absolutely nothing, just LEDs or now smart internet connect IoT LED bulbs, and they use much less energy than incandescents, and they last much longer. I don't know why they couldn't. They could have made incandescents last much longer.
I don't know if they last much longer. Right? I have 1,000 incandescent bulbs.
The LED
bulbs, didn't you, Monica? You stocked up on them.
But
the lamps won't take them anymore. I have to go to antique stores to get lamps.
But I think the LEDs last way longer, and the incandescents don't have a long life. But my point is that I think they saw all of this coming, that they're going to need the energy for the grid algorithm ghetto.
Yes.
And so then they're like, okay, we're going to put LEDs on everyone because
Yes.
it will reduce your energy usage. And then that stuff's going to go
Absolutely.
more
Yes.
for what we need it
100%.
for. So
yeah, so the lamps look like they can take them because they still have the big bases. But when I put my light bulbs in them, they won't work or they blow out. Yeah, they've really transitioned now. But yeah, I agree with you. That energy, because now so in the newspaper today, yesterday, all this stuff about in Europe, the green thing is failing and it's losing political power, and Trump's like renaming the green energy department and all of this stuff. And my thinking was, yeah, because they did all that so that they could subsidize the technology and get everybody changed. And now they have to plan all along was to bring back the nuclear power plants. That's probably why Germany took the nukes offline. I don't know if Fukushima was done on purpose. I doubt that, but they took it all offline to force this transition. Now we're there, and now they are bringing it. I mean, it's just in the news today and yesterday. They're going to bring all the stuff back: coal, nuclear, the nuclear plants in the Russian peace deal, as you pointed out.
I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Like a few weeks ago, I tried to make an Amazon purchase, which I hadn't done for like 6 months, and a few items, but one of the items were incandescent light bulbs. And my order was I put the order in, and the order was immediately canceled, and my account suspended.
Your account was suspended.
Like they like, no, you're not getting incandescents.
Wow. In California, it's so weird because this is totally unconstitutional. You are not allowed to send that stuff into California. I've had to have faucets, light stuff repaired in Texas because you can't have water pressure here. You can't have incandescent lighting. It's insane. It's of all the things that that the Commerce Clause has been misread to allow, the things that that should be allowed, like interstate insurance exchanges and this kind of hardware sharing, whatever, cross-border, not allowed. So I've been stockpiling incandescent bulbs for years. So if you come to LA, bring a suitcase.
I'll smuggle the bulbs. But all right, this was a long edition of Cognitive Dissidents, but we're rounding out the year. So any final thoughts or whatever?
You go first, Mike.
No, just Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas from Parallel Mike.
I like it. It's simple, but it says it. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. May the odds be ever in your favor. Because I like to sign off.
Okay. I got one question before we all finish. This is our Christmas show. Do you guys have a Christmas tradition in terms of a film that you watch every year, or a favorite Christmas film? Because I'm looking for one this year. So
Home Alone.
Suggestions.
Home Alone.
Home Alone's a great one.
Home Alone.
Elf.
Yeah.
Elf.
My kids haven't. I don't have a tradition in that sense, but we haven't seen Home Alone, so I might watch it for the first time.
Home Alone was great.
With the kids, no. Not yet.
Wow.
Elf is really funny. It's Will Ferrell. If you're looking for something like sweet, we watch the old ones, Rudolph and all of that. I'm doing actually a Monica's Movies. I do a premium subscriber thing, Monica's Movies with Scott and Bobby. And once a month we do a movie, and we're doing It's a Wonderful Life, which was always like a big classic. I always loved Miracle on 34th Street as well. But Scott said Wonderful Life, which is like so pro-Fed, like it was about basically fractional reserve banking or something. I can't remember. But he said he went way deep and is really cracking the code on it. But it's still a lovely movie, but I'm sure it's full of absolute propaganda. But yeah, Miracle on 34th Street was lovely, but Elf is our favorite.
All right, yeah.
I'm a bit of a traditionalist because I'm from England. So yeah, Charles Dickens and Scrooge, and that's my favorite thing to watch. If you can find a good adaptation of that, it's pretty good.
What's the best Scrooge? Tell me.
I can't remember. There was a BBC, believe it or not, BBC adaptation about, I think it was about 10 years ago that I once watched, and I've been trying to find it ever since to show money.
Figure it out, put it in Substack, and copy me on the post. Please. Please.
Well, yeah, and I guess we'll go ahead.
He has a first Christmas.
Who?
Mike's household is celebrating a first Christmas.
So definitely. I've already started watching the X-Men animated series from the 1990s with my son. That was always my dream. That one day I would have a son and he's already watching it with me, so that's what I'll be doing for Christmas.
Beautiful, baby.
So the silver lining, not everything is black pilled, and so yeah, as we all say, the good wins. In the end, we're just going to have interesting times getting there. So
I have a website that I really just for my own personal use, monicamixes.com. And I have a bunch of Christmas. I did 12 cocktails of Christmas one year. So if you're looking for a Christmas cocktail, I have some beautiful. Yeah, I even have a joke one called the Blue Helmet, which is super delicious. But anyway, so that's good. We have definitely a very white pilled Christmas.
yeah, and yeah, I was just going to add, I'll be geopolitics and empire will go. The airwaves will go quiet towards the end of the year because it's just friends, family time. And I can't schedule podcasts because then someone's going to be in town or the wife's going to be like, oh, we have this dinner or that thing today. And so it's also a good time for everyone listening to tune out and just hang out with real people. So I guess with that, have a great new year. We'll see everyone in 2026 for the next Cognitive Dissidents.
Happy New Year.